Salvo estimates that around 1% of construction material is reclaimed and reused of the millions of tonnes that are destroyed. The carbon cost of not reusing is massive, wasteful, and it's avoidable.
Before 1950, reuse was more ingrained in human nature, and it has gradually been degraded as less of a necessity and more of a consumer choice. A choice which has been guided toward newly manufactured materials due to influences like the speed of demolitions and the economic shift away from more careful deconstruction and circulation of reclaimed materials.
Reclamation and reuse in design is an ethos rather than an aesthetic, but it's become a trending look, and looks can be deceiving. How do we know what is true?
Reproduction of antiques is nothing new, but since the mid-2000s, reuse started to be recognised as the reclaimed look, and popularity led to cheaper, faked alternatives. Marketed with product descriptions like heritage, old, antique, and even reclaimed, beyond misleading people with pretend eco-friendliness, the issue is the environmental cost, not simply of the new, but the additional cost of making the new look reclaimed.
Launched by Salvo, our Truly Reclaimed label assures that a product or batch of material is genuinely antique or reclaimed. Salvage materials have long been celebrated for their connection with history, but now more than ever, as we seek urgent ways to restore our planet, reuse is an essential part of our future. I'm Sarah from Salvo, and I'm here visiting the Antique Oak Flooring Company to show you the Truly Reclaimed label in action.
Today, the owner Bob Lovell is giving us a tour and sharing some reclamation rescue stories. The Antique Oak Flooring Company, based in Kent, is a family-run business with a working lifetime steeped in the reclamation and reuse of antique and reclaimed flooring.
Here is our showroom. This is a copy of one of the floors in the Palace de Versailles, and it's made from antique oak. The oak itself is about 250 years old, and the component parts in this floor are all hand restored, but it's quite an amazing floor, and it retains all its original surfaces. And then over here we have all the typical types of parquet that you would find mainly from the 1920s and 1930s, from Burmese teak, panga panga, Iroko, Douglas fir, Rhodesian teak. In fact, a lot of this came out of the Bank of England. It was taken out way back in time with a view to reusing it and putting it back in after the computer floors were installed. And in the end it was decided that it couldn't go back in, so it all got reused. We've got the last vestiges of that left in stock. But and it's an interesting story because Rhodesian teak and Burmese teak are exactly the same species. But they took saplings from Burma, planted them in Africa, and when the timber was harvested in around 1930, they found that the actual, because of the mineral and soil differences, the timber itself was crimson red, and it was highly prized. And so it was installed in the Bank of England, the Stock Exchange, Tate and Lyle headquarters, and various other high-profile buildings. So it's quite an interesting timber subject, that one. I was working for a general architectural salvage company which basically dealt in all manner of architectural reclamation. And the timber side of it was a department, and I wanted it to have its own time and its own funding and its own sort of journey, really.
The label helps people distinguish truly reclaimed from new products that are made to resemble the old, highlighting the environmental benefit of choosing materials that really are reclaimed for reuse.
These old boards were part of the old cotton mills and warehouses and barns that ran along the banks of the Mississippi, which back about 18 years ago flooded really badly the Mississippi. And they've slowly started to dismantle these buildings, and there's a lot of oak in there. And we get this processed with a machined back, machined edges, and a semi-sanded surface. So it's got a very sort of industrial sort of look to it. But polished up, it can look quite wonderful and lush. And that would sit in a Georgian property quite nicely. every buying opportunity is an individual opportunity, and it's only alive for a certain amount of time. So you either take that opportunity or it goes on to someone else.
In 2021, the Antique Oak Flooring Company alone saved 889 tonnes of CO2e. That's the equivalent of 6.2 million miles by train, 44 million cups of black coffee, and 10 days of the whole world's text messaging.
These are boards that were taken out of the Gouda cheese factory in Holland. And these were actually the shelves where the cheeses sat, and they matured. You can actually see the disc marks here where the cheeses sat. And the cheeses were manually turned every 2 weeks. And they've gone now to a mechanical system whereby the cheeses are turned by machine. So all these enormous shelves came out and became available. And because of the scale and size of them, because most of them are 4 metres long and 280 mil wide, they're of a size and scale that suits period properties. And we've supplied a lot of this for early 18th century restoration work.
Often information is lost with the exchange of owner, but the label can speak of history or processes to immerse curious customers in the stories and the impact of reuse.
This was some decking that came out of the Olympic Village. We had over 1,000 square metres. It's Brazilian walnut. And it was an area that was decked that ultimately they were changing to granite. And yeah, we bought it all. It's got some beautiful tones and colours in it. It would make a really nice interior floor, actually.
Truly Reclaimed is designed to give confidence to owners planning reuse and more certainty to specifiers and designers that want their commitment to reuse recognised. For example, the label can be used by an architect or an engineer to record reuse on the same site.
I think the word reclaimed has been hijacked somewhat in the last few years, and you can see it in advertising for new products that aren't reclaimed. And I think it's probably about time that someone sort of stood up and said, "This is truly reclaimed." I think it's fair, and let's see whether people pick up on it, because it can only benefit all of us, really.
Salvo was established in 1991 to champion a reuse economy. Initially it started as a directory to make it easier for people to source and reuse architectural salvage and reclaimed building material. Today Salvo is the destination for reuse, with the marketplace and the global directory. In the UK and Ireland alone, our listings feature 500 suppliers dealing in everything from reclaimed stone to architectural salvage, sanitary ware and lighting. The Truly Reclaimed initiative has grown from Salvo's experience regulating and administering the Salvo Code, a world-leading assurance for high standards in responsible sourcing since 1995. You'll notice the QR tags, as the aim of the label is not only to verify authenticity, but also to connect you to the materials, whether you are sourcing in a salvage showroom or experiencing them in a shop or a restaurant.
Well, the commercial side was a great benefit to us over the years. It gave us a real boost, and that became very popular. You go into any restaurant now and you see reclaimed wood on the walls, and that sort of brought it to the attention of a lot more people, and that sort of spread out into the domestic market as well.
The Truly Reclaimed campaign will increase awareness of ethical dimensions as well as the social and economic impact of the reuse sector.
Yeah, I mean, we employed a couple of local chaps. They're brothers. They come from the local area, and which we thought was a good thing to do, to employ local people. And we've trained them up, and they're now restoring antique oak floors in there, doing all the restoration on the surfaces, patching, plugging, restoring the surfaces back, polishing. And every floor is individual, so that it's all done bespoke. But it's a wide industry. There's so much going on out there.
Despite the momentum around the circular economy and the UK's diverse salvage scene, reuse in construction has been declining and the reclamation sector remains an underutilised resource. The Truly Reclaim label champions a reuse economy that delivers true circularity by maximising resources and embodied carbon in the continuous reuse of materials at their highest value with minimum downcycling and waste. It's hard to believe that only 50 years ago it wasn't unusual to see a Georgian fireplace being skipped. Today there is an established market for salvage like this, where trashing them is generally considered bonkers. But we're in an interesting transition. Sure, it's easy to see the beauty and the value in period fireplaces and antique flooring, but there is hope that we may find significance and eco-appeal in designing with modern salvage.
I've just recently bought something in which is a fairly modern sports hall floor. And I bought it specifically for a client who's doing a local authority project. And they had a fairly low budget. So it was a case of joining up dots. I was offered the material, I wasn't going to buy it. I had a customer who wanted something relatively cheap. And so we put the two together and that's only about 30 years old. So, you know, if it can be reclaimed and reused, then that's good.
Without a strong and varied reuse market, there is the danger that high-value materials follow lower-value routes, like recycling or being disposed of. We have reached a tipping point. Customers are savvy and people want to reduce waste. It's not enough for companies to shout about their eco-credentials. Customers want to support businesses that help them reduce their carbon footprint and inspire their choices.
That was an idea of trying to replicate a typical Victorian tessellated hall floor. So the little tessellated tiles, multicoloured. And we thought, well, using up small end of runs of parquet, we could create something very similar, especially if we put borders in down the edges. And I think it works very well. Definitely scope there for people who want to minimise wastage and for interior designers to let their imagination run.
After walking around Bob's showroom, design ideas are running wild, from world-renowned restaurants to fashion brands like Levi's that they have supplied. Designers choose reclaimed flooring for all manner of reasons, to create original spaces and warm atmospheres that really connect with customers. Like us, these materials have a past, whether their stories span continents and across many decades or centuries, or if the material was recently dismantled from the same city. Reclaimed materials have a real story to communicate that gives us a unique perception.
By linking products to protocols and allowing people to easily see and share the stories behind reuse, the label builds trust.
It's true that not all stories will be extraordinary. Sometimes they are simple, but sometimes places have been blended, borrowed and reclaimed from one building to supply another. Amazing stories are important carbon savings that have come together because people have rescued, reused or repurposed to build a new narrative that is truly reclaimed.
Support Truly Reclaimed for real reuse.